Live on a Thursday. It's the 27th of March. Welcome inside the vault for a Ravens lunch hour live stream. And there is so much going on right now in the world of sports. But when it comes to Baltimore, Maryland, and this state, it's a big one. Orioles opening day kicks off in just over 3 hours from Toronto. And of course, the home opener will be on Monday against the Red Sox as far as the Baltimore home opener. But it is Major League Baseball opening day, and the O's will get their season started coming up later this afternoon in Toronto, north of the border. And then tonight, just as that game is probably finishing up, or maybe just after that game is finishing up, the 4-seed Maryland Terrapins will take on the top seed Florida Gators in the Sweet 16. I'm going to discuss both of those topics at the back end, just because it's a special day. It's a slow time in Ravens content. So on the back end, we'll be talking Sweet 16 college hoops. We'll be talking Orioles opening day, but first, we'll be talking, of course, Ravens. I'm Bobby Trossett. My co-host and partner, Sarah Ellison, is on vacation in Florida, and they're having a blast. So I look forward to catching up with the Ellison family next weekend for the inaugural Vault Summit in Columbus. But shout out to Sarah and her family. Much-deserved time off for her kids' spring break. I look forward to reuniting with her on Monday coming up next week. I'll be wheels up tonight to Boston for a wedding tomorrow night, which means I will be live from a remote location in Massachusetts coming up tomorrow, normal time, 12 noon Eastern. You guys know the drill. Glad you're with me on this Thursday. On your way in, please like the video if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when we're dropping our daily live content, and get ready for what I have coming up. Ravens assistant, and he is a coaching assistant, Dr. Rush, outside linebackers coach Chuck Smith, made an exciting guarantee, and he did so by quote tweeting yesterday's birthday boy. I can't believe I let it pass without shouting him out. But Kyle Van Noy, Ravens outside linebacker, Ravens pass rusher, turned 34 yesterday, and he had a little bit of fun with his birthday, trolling some Ravens pass rush critics. We'll share those tweets with you and also react to Matt Miller's mock draft. He did a 7-round mock draft, and I think you're going to like who he has the Ravens selecting 27th overall in the opening round on April 24th. So lots to get to today. Glad you guys can be with me, but let's begin with this. KVN at NFL Stats wished him a happy 34th and took a look at his stats that he tallied up from a year ago, which was his second season in Baltimore, his first full season, you might remember. But last year, 41 tackles, 21 quarterback hits, 14 tackles for loss, 12 and a half sacks, 2 passes defended, 2 forced fumbles, one of which was a recovery. And yes, he was a Pro Bowler. Kyle has been a fantastic signing. They brought him in during, what was it now? The 2023 season. I think it was right prior to their trip to London to face the Tennessee Titans. And as he often remarks, they brought him off the couch because he was unsigned. And my goodness, has he proven himself through 2 years in Baltimore? Has he benefited from some of the dominance that they've had interior-wise, right? Nnamdi Madubuike's presence, big Michael Pierce's presence, so on and so forth. Of course, MP just retired a couple weeks ago. Yes, he has. But we shouldn't diminish what KVN has brought to what really for years now has been an inexperienced and unproven pass rushing department in Baltimore. But the beauty of it is the last 2 years, not only have they been atop the league in sacks, but they've had a guy who's completely changed things around, and that is Mr. Chuck Smith. It was a non-traditional hire made by John Harbaugh when he brought him in to serve as outside linebackers coach. Chuck was more of a specialist who's become a really valuable assistant. You guys know on this show that I always look for excuses to bring up Dr. Rush because I think his impact is significant. And he quote tweeted KVN, by the way. I forgot to even read it. On that opening slide, Kyle was like, not bad for a team with no pass rush. Trolling the critics out there. And don't worry, we'll have a counter to this because let's be clear, that pass rush was nearly non-existent in what became a road playoff loss in late January to Buffalo. But throughout the year, no question, they were number 2 overall league-wide in sacks. And that, of course, was coming off a year where they led the trifecta for the first time ever. Sacks, points allowed, and takeaways. And that was, of course, Mike Macdonald's final year as defensive coordinator before they went and promoted from within with Zach Orr. And then obviously Mike gets his head coaching opportunity and heads off to Seattle. But the constant here is that Chuck Smith has been at the forefront of this pass rush department the last couple of years, and I like the direction that they're heading. And Chuck does too, because he was confident enough to quote tweet KVN and said, hey, there's more coming. Blowing some smoke. #RavensFlock. So, look, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this. Could it perhaps be via the draft? Could Chuck just be referring to, hey, Kyle, you're under contract for another year, so I'm referring to you? That's probably what it is. But tying it all in, I think it's pretty clear that edge is a significant need for the Ravens. And there's going to be some talented players hanging around, potentially falling to the Ravens at 27. But Kyle will be back, will be the veteran of this room, assuming that they don't bring in another like Zadarius Smith or another free agent who's available. But Kyle, with a base salary of just over $2.7 million for 2025, yeah, he's chilling. I should say the Ravens are chilling with those kind of numbers, given the production that he put forth last year and the year prior. Double-digit sacks in 2024 for Kyle, a great locker room piece, somebody that can drop back in coverage if need be. But as we all learned in that divisional round playoff game, what's a dominant pass rush throughout the regular season if it's not going to show up consistently in the postseason? And that's this delicate balance that's required to fully evaluate the Ravens pass rush at this point. What they're getting out of what they currently have, what they're not getting out of what they currently have, what they've invested in and not seen a ton of return on. Certainly David Ojabo comes to mind with a second-round pick from a few years ago. But I'll tell you what, Chuck Smith is respected within this locker room. And you better believe he knows the pass rush community from a prospect perspective coming out of college. And that brings me back to last year during the draft and a press conference that Eric DeCosta had. And he had this to say about the Ravens assistant.
Chuck, I mean, when he talks, I listen because he is a great pass rush specialist, and he's looking for specific traits, and he gets excited by certain guys, and I like that. I love his enthusiasm. He's a joy to work with in the draft meetings because you know if he loves a guy, and that's exciting. That's what you want as an evaluator, and as a guy that kind of organizes the draft. You really want your scouts and your coaches to take ownership of certain guys and get on the table for guys. And Chuck does that, and he's a great coach. And so if he sees these traits in somebody, I get excited. I think we all saw how our guys developed last year and emerged and what we did, and I think Chuck's a big part of that.
There have been absolutely developments that need to be discussed and will be discussed. I think Odafe Owe comes to the top of mind, being that he put forth his first double-digit sack season. You know, the motor and the athleticism that he always brings to the table, and I think the technique has become more variety-driven with the presence of Chuck Smith. And when you listen to Chuck talk philosophy, you know that not only is he helping out these guys with intangibles, but he's actually educating them on the history of the position, being that Ojabo and Owe, who were high school teammates, by the way, and both of Nigerian heritage, were very late bloomers to the game of football.
Knowledge. One of the things that I pride myself on as being somewhat of a pass rush historian outside of a pass rush coach, and now as a position coach, I enlighten them on the history of it. Who created the cross chop. He didn't know that the cross chop was created by another Nigerian, O.C. Yomiuri, from the New York Giants. And that's like, wow, him and Dafe, they didn't know that Reggie White once played in the USFL. They didn't know about Chris Dolman was one of the original hybrids when he came out of Pitt. So all these different things, understanding when the sack was invented in 1982. So remember, they came to football late. So one of the way that builds confidence when you understand there were people who invented these techniques. There were people that, how it started. And so when I talk to them, almost like not really a teacher student, I look at it like a uncle and a nephew. You know what I mean? Uncle tells you all this stuff and you're like, I'm gonna believe uncle. I might not believe daddy, but I believe his brother. So that's how it builds, you know what I mean? And then we take it from all those things, watching film. I give them, things to read, classic books about Rush. We look at videos, and then they see it on the field. Then they see other guys doing it. And I think when it comes to that point, that helps build confidence and, respect amongst each other because we can talk. And it's not a dictatorship. It's like a partnership with everybody in that room.
There's a little glimpse of what Chuck Smith, the educator, right? Chuck Smith, the historian, looks and sounds like. Oh, but he's got game too. Go back to January of 2024 when he showed off not only his getup, but a little bit of that dry humor on X. Breaking, coming from Chuck himself. Is this Chuck's? Hold on a second here. Is this Chuck's actual account? Let's make sure this is Chuck's account. I don't want to speak too soon. Let me just make sure I got his correct @. Of course, this is not Chuck's actual account. Anyway, it looks like Chuck Smith the fourth, because actually Chuck Smith's, the Ravens Chuck Smith on X is @Chuck Smith NFL. What's hilarious is as I was going through my prep, I didn't put 2 and 2 together that this would be a little bit cheesy if this actually came from Chuck himself. But anyway, Chuck Smith the fourth @Chuck H. Smith on X tweeted out that he was spotted swagged out before the game against Houston, according to his sources, which again was him. Maybe that's his son. Does Chuck have a son? Maybe that's Chuck's son. Anyway, point is, philosophically, the historian background that he has for the game as a former player himself, how universally respected he is within the pass rush community, and what he's shown so far through 2 years as the Ravens outside linebackers coach, I think gives a lot of credence to the big game that he's talking here on Twitter, which is, hey, there's more where that came from. Whether it be from Kyle, whether it be from Adafe, who as of right now is set to play this season on the 5th-year option, which was exercised a year ago by the Ravens front office. Whether that be a prayer answered and David Ojabo is not only available but impactful. I wouldn't hold your breath on that. I think the world of him. But at this point through 3 seasons, David's played in just 16, 18 games and has 1 start. Now, again, in 2022, obviously that was a lost year because of his Achilles tear on Pro Day at Michigan. And they took a flyer on him. He went from being a bona fide top 15 pick in the draft a few years ago to slipping to the 2nd round. Mike McDonald, of course, had Michigan ties. He was in Baltimore at that time. And they were like, hey, we're gonna take him in the 2nd. Maybe their expectations were low. Maybe they knew that this would be a calculated risk. So far, it hasn't paid off. And you hope that for David's sake and for the Ravens outside linebackers room's sake and their overall pass rush that he can and is capable of taking that step. But I can't sit here and stand up on an island for David when it comes to what the Ravens' priorities should be this offseason and what you can expect from him in year 4. And I feel similarly, even though it's such a smaller sample size and would be unfair to, it's like apples and oranges to have that same conversation for Adisa Isaac, right? Adisa is a Penn State player, much like Adafe. Did not see a whole lot of him last year. He was banged up. And so where I'm going with this is, outside of Kyle Van Noy and Adafe Owe, what do you have in this room right now? There's a lot of question marks, which is why at the top of a lot of different analysts in and around Baltimore's lists is edge come the draft or the latter half of free agency. John Harbaugh talked about the pass rush last month in Indy at the Combine.
I think you want to be able to get there with 3. Maybe make them hold a little longer. You want to be able to get there with simulated, where you bring 4, but it's not the guy they expect to come and make them hold the ball with coverage guys. You want to be able to get there with 4 rushers. Like some teams, the teams that have those guys, they do a great job of them. We have those guys too. We've done that a lot. You want to be able to get home with zone blitzes, with man blitzes, with all-out blitzes. We like to keep it moving. We like to keep people guessing. That's kind of our format. And 4-man rush, absolutely, big part of that.
We can do 2 more.
Well, we know what worked really well for Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, that's for sure. What didn't work well for the Ravens in the divisional round was trying to get out of their own way. And despite what you see on the screen here, I know you remember these statistics. I'm sorry to bring them back up. But the Ravens became the first team in NFL history back in January to rush for 175 plus yards, complete 70% of their passes, average 10 plus yards per pass, convert 70% of their third downs, have no punts or missed field goal, all in the same game, regular season or postseason, and lose. Now, what should be emboldened at the bottom of this tweet? You do not win postseason games, which are do or die, by turning the football over 3 times. And that's exactly what they did. Right? It's as simple as that. We can analyze and dissect and pick apart every single aspect of what we watched unfold in Buffalo on that late January night. You just don't win games like that with 3 turnovers. It was careless. I know the Mark Andrews fumble was a great play by Buffalo, but it can't happen. And on top of that, though, what also can't happen is a no-show from your pass rush department. Ravens defense in that game against the Bills were able to muster up just 1 sack. It was a half sack for Nnamdi Madubuike, and it was a half sack for Kyle Van Noy. Kyle played his heart out. He had 2 quarterback hits, that half sack, 3 tackles, 1 of which were solo. Nnamdi had 7 total tackles, a half sack, and 1 quarterback hit. Kyle Hamilton led the way, surprise, surprise, with a total of 9 tackles, 6 of which were solo. But it wasn't enough. Josh Allen had all the time in the world, and he saw the end result. And I get it, Evan. Buffalo's offensive line was among the league's best, if not the best, league-wide. But this is what you keep coming back to ahead of the draft, right? I don't know if there's going to be a game wrecker there at 27, but continue to take swings in the draft to try and find that guy that you can develop. They've had success, even though it probably took a lot more patience than a lot of us planned on wanting to award, right, for Adafe. But that's a double-digit sack getter right there. And that's a player that is absolutely a candidate to be breakout. I think there's still some untapped potential there. But this now brings me to one of the players that could potentially help this entire topic from an interior pass rush presence, the push, the pull, all the dirty work that happens with not a lot of credit from the outside. And that's a potential defensive tackle that Matt Miller of ESPN has going to Baltimore at 27th overall coming up on opening night of the draft next month. And that is Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon. We'll get to his numbers and a little bit on him in just a bit. But as Jameson notes here, Miller has them taking Derek Harmon at defensive tackle at 27, guard on day 2, and then edge, wide receiver, tight end, and running back in the later rounds. Better get a safety in there as well. Maybe they plan on doing that again, much like they did last year towards the beginning of summer, right before camp with Eddie Jackson. Didn't exactly work out in their favor whatsoever, but maybe they plan on that instead of addressing the position through the draft. As far as Derek's concerned, this dude's a beast. This dude is an absolute freak of nature. Just 21 years old, by the way. He'll turn 22 in October. 6'4", 313, began his college career at Michigan State, where he played for 3 seasons, then transferred to Oregon. He's a second-team All-Big Ten Conference nominee in 2024. And you see the arm and the hand size. This dude's reckless. And how about the athleticism? Given those traits, given those numbers, measurables, I should say, 6'4", 313, you're telling me he ran a 4.95 with a 1.74 10-yard split? Look out. This guy's a player. And if he falls in the Ravens' lap, I like the fit there. You get him under Chuck Smith's tutelage. You get him in the same meeting rooms as Zach Orr. I like the way that sets up. Here's some other notes from All 22 PFF. And they write, Derek Harmon's one of the most intriguing prospects in the draft. With a big frame and great pass rush ability, he'll need to finish plays in the run defense to unlock his potential. Where will he ultimately end up? That remains to be seen. But here is more on the Oregon product. 91.2 grade and a true pass set pass rush. I got to blow this up in front of me so that I can actually see it. He had 39 hurries, forced 39 hurries. That was the most in the country among FBS Division I. Had a pass rush win rate of 18.8%. That also led the country among FBS Division I active players. But that's the good. And under the bad, as Sarah and I discussed recently when his name came up, he wasn't the only one, Matt Miller, mocking Harmon to Baltimore. Got a tough tackling grade, below average, 29.8 overall. He was in the bottom 12 of FBS Division I in that category. He had a 27% missed tackle rate, had the 10th highest among his peers. Again, you don't want to be high in that department. He was 64th in stop rate, ranked low in tackles that constitute failures for the opposing running game. This is all from All 22 PFF. And as they summarized, great tools and great length, needs to get stronger and disengage. I'm going to bet on the upside. There just aren't enough D tackles that have that frame, athleticism, and movement skills. So in other words, perhaps a slight project. But again, with that kind of measurables, that kind of potential, that kind of upside, maybe that's something that the Ravens take a risk on. 6'4", 313, young player, junior class out of Oregon. That's Matt Miller's latest. Well, in other news, what if I told you Malik Harrison made some headlines recently? did his introductory press conference as a Pittsburgh Steeler. Certainly that acquisition and the Ravens allowing him to walk in free agency, just as they did with Patrick Queen the year prior, has not garnered as much attention as nobody's surprised by. I think the reality is they're two different players, two different personalities. One was a former first-round pick. One, in Malik's case, was a former third-round pick during the pandemic season in 2020 and did a lot for the Ravens. And to be honest with you, he was one of those unsung types of players. Even this past year, I know he struggled in underneath pass coverage when he was working on rotations there alongside Roquan with Chris Board. But this is somebody that played outside. This is somebody that played special teams. He did everything asked of him. Now he's going to Pittsburgh, and he had this to say about facing off with Lamar and Derek now that there's no practice regulations being governed.
Forward to trying to be part of this defense, stopping that run game with Derrick Henry, with Lamar twice or even 3 times this season.
Oh yeah, I mean, going against it in practice every day, you can't do too much because you don't want to mess with church money. But now me being on the other side, I can really just unleash and just dominate how I know I can do.
I got to be honest, I think this is a total nothing burger. What do you expect these guys to say? What do you want them to say? It was totally blown up out of proportion. In practice, you can't do too much because you don't want to mess with the church money. Now being on the other side, I can really just unleash and dominate how I know I can do. What do you expect the guy to say? Now, that said, go ahead and spew that kind of confidence. Love it. It's what you're supposed to do. But going to execute and make sure that confidence is backed up come game time when you're trying to essentially shoestring tackle Lamar Jackson when he hits a crease, or you're trying to get out in front of Derrick Henry when he's coming downhill when he finds a gap. I don't know about that. Best of luck, because Malik already, the knock on Malik last year was some of the tackle angles, right? So the pursuit. He had some tough film highlights. I can think of Kansas City on opening night comes to mind. So it's a whole different beast, as he, I'm sure, knows well, coming up this fall when he will face off against his former team twice at the very least. You never know. They obviously met in the wild card round, as we all remember, a year ago. But what else is he supposed to say? Now, will all of this turnover and overlap continue to kind of reinvigorate, rejuvenate what I believe is the most storied rivalry in all of professional sports, and that is Pittsburgh and Baltimore? PQ certainly has done his fair share of effort to ensure that.
But I mean, I want to be that villain. I want to be that guy. So I'm looking to do some stuff to them.
That was, of course, during his introductory press conference a year ago. Now you have Malik Harrison joining the group. Deshaun Elliott is in Pittsburgh. And obviously there's been countless players over the years who have made the transition from Baltimore to Pittsburgh or vice versa. Arthur Maulet comes to mind. There's obviously a familiarity when it comes to AFC North football. There's a lot that these two organizations have in common. But for Malik and PQ, for that matter, and Manny wants me to go check the Discord server for the photo that he dropped into the football chat yesterday, because PQ, oh boy, he found out the hard way going up against Derrick Henry. Here it is, this photo, courtesy of Manny in my Bobby Baltimore Discord server. But there was the king taking it to the house. And there was PQ south of him in no man's land. I love it. I think this type of junk, this type of talk is great for the rivalry, great for the sport, great for the division, great for these two teams. But the Steelers got a lot to figure out here before they do anything else, because bottom line is they do not have a quarterback. Well, they do. They have 2 on their roster, and the projected starter as of today is Mason Rudolph. But who the hell is playing, I should say throwing, to DK Metcalf and George Pickens? I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is that the Orioles opening day roster just came out. We'll share some thoughts on that in just a bit. They'll kickstart their 2025 season with opening day later on this afternoon in Toronto, which we'll discuss. But what I want to first discuss was how Baltimore and Derek Queen, who's become the freshman sensation for the Maryland Terrapins, were both a topic on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week when he had the great LeBron James on his show. Listen to this. Baltimore, Derek Queen taking center stage.
Queen kid, 6'10".
Yeah.
6'10". He's in the. I don't know if you heard about him saying, "Give me the ball."
Yeah, I'm from Baltimore.
Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic.
I'm from Baltimore. One of my best friends from Baltimore, Carmelo Anthony. So I get it. I get it. Give me the damn ball, and he wanted the ball.
That's what I told him in the conversation. I was like, Baltimore is one of the cities where if you give an answer on why are you a confident human, I'm from Baltimore. Everybody's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. There's no follow-up question to that. Okay, got it. I got it.
Oh, it's classic. Of course, LeBron and Carmelo, similar age, been Olympic teammates with each other, and Melo is Baltimore's own. Derek Queen has become Baltimore's own, and he will try to continue doing exactly that coming up tonight when the Terps take on the top-seeded Florida Gators in the Sweet 16. Should be a freaking blast. And between Orioles opening day and Maryland basketball being in the Sweet 16, all within a few hours of each other, this is kind of a banner day. Yvette hits me with a super chat, and she writes, did I miss your comments on the rumors that Dak is going to the Browns? Is this an internet rumor? Right now, their quarterback room consists of Deshaun Watson and Kenny Pickett. Of course, Dak is in Dallas. I have not seen anything about that. And I just Twitter searched it very randomly. The first thing that comes up is Des Bryant, former Dallas Cowboy, former Baltimore Raven. I know we all remember his era. Those tough times for the wide receiver position, by the way, in Baltimore. But Des tweeted, Dak trade talks to the Browns are not true 20 hours ago. So there you have that. Cleveland obviously has the second overall pick coming up in next month's draft. And assuming that Tennessee is going to be going with Cam Ward, do they like Shedeur Sanders enough to use the number 2 overall pick on him rather than going with Abdul Carter and allowing him to join forces on opposite ends with Myles Garrett, who got rewarded obviously with a massive contract extension earlier this offseason? I don't know. It depends on what you feel like you have in next year's quarterback class, which is never guaranteed. It also depends on what you feel like is left out there for potential bridge quarterback options. Russell Wilson, of course, is going to the New York Giants. Kirk Cousins is currently under contract in Atlanta to be the backup to Michael Penix. Daniel Jones has already landed in Indianapolis, and if I'm a betting man, I think he's going to beat out Anthony Richardson in what I'm sure is going to be an open competition for the summer. What other bridge quarterbacks am I missing? There have been a bunch that have signed. Jameis Winston, I guess, probably could have been viewed as that, but he's already spent time in Cleveland, and they willingly let him go. He now lands in New York, by the way, to back up Russ. I don't know if that's going to be categorized as competition. Tommy DeVito is currently at QB3 there. I mean, what a quarterback carousel it is these days for the New York Giants. They're going nowhere fast. Appreciate you guys for being with me here on this Thursday. Over 500 concurrence across all platforms here, Tila. Wanted to let you know I was never able to touch base with Jordan Reed from ESPN. I'm sure the guy's super busy. But I hope to have him on at some point in the coming weeks as we get ready for the draft. Mike Golick is scheduled to come on tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. So I look forward to having one of the greats in the radio industry and somebody that is a former player himself. Look forward to having him on. I also look forward to this, and what a week it's been. Kind of a saga with Maryland basketball and this Kevin Willard situation, who, of course, is the head coach of the Terps. He's led Maryland to first Sweet 16 in a minute. And now they'll take on Florida tonight. The Gators are ridiculously skilled. And this dude, Walter Clayton, who you see in the middle part of the graphic on the right-hand side, is as good of a point guard as I've watched in quite some time. He's just got a certain level of fluidity to his game. So smooth. Everything he does is just methodical. And he pushes the tempo. He's got a silky smooth jump shot. Great vision. Everything runs through him, and they got to be absolutely on their P's and Q's should they want to take down and limit Walter Clayton and the Gators. But what's been hanging over Maryland's head this week, in what has been really, really strange for this to be taking place right now in preparation for a Sweet 16, is the situation right now almost a standoff between Kevin Willard and his program, the athletics department, the university. So much so that the smoke out there right now about how Villanova is the favorite to land Kevin Willard, and Kevin's been using the media as a mechanism to essentially get what he wants with NIL and revenue sharing, contractual details going on in the back end. Damon Evans just left to take another athletic director job. Perhaps some of you aren't familiar with all of this. For all of this to be taking place over the last week leading into the Sweet 16, you talk about a distraction. John Rothstein, CBS Sports Insider, caught everybody up to speed on where things stand with Kevin Willard. And again, another program that appears to be in the driver's seat to land Kevin Willard as their next head coach, and that is the Villanova Wildcats.
Now, 5 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday before the start of the Sweet 16, there is now one power conference job that's open, and that's Villanova. Now, Villanova is waiting on Maryland's Kevin Willard. Now, I reported on Selection Sunday that Maryland was working on a contract extension that would make Kevin Willard one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in all of college basketball. That deal that Kevin Willard has on the table now for Maryland, that's over $5 million a year. And there's other incentives that Maryland has put in the fine print in an effort to keep Kevin Willard at Maryland. As we have seen from Kevin Willard's reaction to press conferences throughout the NCAA tournament, things at Maryland are extremely, extremely volatile right now. The AD, Damon Evans, who presented Kevin Willard with a term sheet a couple of weeks ago, is now set to become the next athletic director at SMU. And Kevin Willard has aired a lot of these frustrations publicly throughout the NCAA tournament. But I have never seen a program go to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament and have all this uncertainty surrounding what's going on with their head coach moving forward. But this is Maryland basketball right now. This is the state of affairs. So Kevin Willard is going to weigh the offer to stay at Maryland and be one of the top 10 highest paid coaches in college basketball, or he's going to go and be the next head coach at Villanova and go back to the Big East where he had great success at Seton Hall.
Again, all of this is happening in the middle of a Sweet 16 run. Can you imagine the distraction? And because Kevin has chosen again to allow this to play out through the media, you better believe during his press conference yesterday ahead of tonight, which is the Sweet 16 matchup against Florida, he was asked about what's been going on.
Been very open the last week about, trying to get greater NIL share, revenue share. I'm sure you saw Mike Loxley yesterday said he would prefer to keep some of these issues in-house. Why have you felt like kind of bringing this discussion in the open has been the best way to advocate for your program?
Well, I'll be honest. I think our biggest thing is we got to stop Clayton. He's really good. He shoots the basketball going left 48%. He shoots it right going at like 38%. So really the last couple of days, trying to come up with a game plan to stop, Clayton, because I just think he's one of the best guards in the country that we've seen. And then really, obviously trying to fix our rebounding woes have been at the top of my mind too. So yeah, it's a big problem.
Good Lord. That is some elite level deflection right there. And again, that is what's been the umbrella over everything leading into tonight's matchup, which is why when I see a super chat from Isaiah, appreciate you, Isaiah, C278, and he says, "What's up, Bobby? Who you got winning this year in the Sweet 16? If you're talking about tonight's game, I don't know how anyone in the right mind objectively can pick Maryland because of the distraction that's surrounding this program right now. If LeBron hadn't have sat down with Pat McAfee earlier this week and dropped what's turned into a total bombshell of an interview, and Stephen A. Smith is going on 17-minute rants as a result of it, responding to him to kick off First Take earlier today, and there's been Michael Jordan and LeBron types of content, you name it. The amount of headlines that came out from that hour-plus long conversation, had that not taken place this week, the Kevin Willard Maryland saga probably would be at the top of the list in terms of hot-button sports items from this week. So to me, I think it's too big of a distraction, one, and two, Florida's just too skilled and deep. And so I'll go Florida tonight. In terms of the whole thing, Sweet 16, I honestly don't even fill out a bracket. So I'm just looking at the games that are left. You got BYU. Sarah's BYU Cougars will take on Alabama tonight. Maryland, Florida. Arizona, Duke. Arkansas, Texas Tech. Tell you, Chris Beard can flat out coach. I would watch out for Texas Tech as a potential 3-seed dark horse. And then tomorrow, Ole Miss and Michigan State play. Kentucky and Tennessee. Michigan and Auburn. Purdue and Houston. So when it's March, I start looking at who's been there. Tom Izzo's been there. I'd be looking at Michigan State tomorrow night. I'd be looking at Texas Tech tonight. And obviously Florida is just ridiculously talented too. So a lot of great games coming up over the next 24 plus hours. And one prior to tonight's games will, of course, be this. It's Orioles opening day. The 2025 season officially kickstarts today in Toronto, just after 3 o'clock. First pitch. Brandon Hyde and the Orioles try to defend their AL East crown from a year ago. The Orioles opening day roster was just released a short while ago. 7 different players will begin the season on the injured list. Gunnar Henderson is the notable name on that list. He's got a right intercostal strain. Am I pronouncing that right? 10-day IL for Gunnar. Obviously a big loss. Grayson Rodriguez, 15-day IL, right elbow inflammation. Don't expect him back. I don't believe anytime soon, but maybe not as long as, Kyle Bradish and Tyler Wells. Both of those guys are on 60-day injured lists with right elbow UCL surgeries having been had. And there's a bunch of other players, but honestly, right now, the big concern, if for me, is the rotation. I don't see this rotation as championship-esque, but if this rotation can overperform and hold down the fort until the likes of Bradish and Rodriguez and even Tyler Wells from a relief standpoint get back, then maybe it'll be sustainable. But Zach Eflin will be your starter today. Charlie Morton will handle game 2. Dean Kramer, game 3. And the new guy, Tomoyuki Sugano, will get Sunday. And then Cade Povich gets the actual Orioles opening day, meaning the Baltimore opening day against the Red Sox, which is coming up on the 31st. I look forward to being in attendance for that game. Maybe I'll see some of you guys out there. As far as Zach Eflin's concerned, the Orioles put together a nice little surprise for him and his family a couple weeks back now when he was officially communicated with that he'd be the opening day starter.
Fresh fill the door, please. Want to sit here? Yeah. That's sit here. Over here. Okay. We have some people that want to say some things to you. Yeah? Okay.
Hey! What are you guys doing? Hi!
Wait, you ready, guys? 1, 2, 3.
Blast off.
You're the opening day starter.
Thank you, girls. That's so sweet. That is amazing. Thank you guys so much for that. That is so cool. Hi.
She took the phone. She just took it.
Hi. Thank you guys so much. Hi, baby. I'll see you guys in a couple days and give you big hugs.
Okay.
Alrighty, I love y'all.
Love you.
Bye.
It's a special deal. We want to get your family involved. So, yeah, congratulations, man.
I really appreciate it. That's amazing.
Happy for you.
I'm honored that you guys chose me, and love you guys very much, man. It means a lot.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations, man. Thank you so much. You. Appreciate it, guys. It's an honor. I really appreciate it. Yeah.
That's well done by the Orioles production team there. Again, Zach Eflin, his wife, all of his daughters there, letting him know that he was going to be the guy today. And that was just from a couple weeks ago. He'll take on Jose Barrios in Toronto. Of course, it'll be a reuniting as well with Anthony Santander, who signed a nice deal with the Blue Jays earlier this offseason. For Eflin, back in 2024, year one with the Orioles, 10-9 with a 3.59 ERA, just over 7 strikeouts per 9, and a 1.149 whip. So that is what you have to look forward to in Orioles land. I'm going to get to a couple calls. What do you say we open up the guest lines here? Not something we do often inside the vault. But if you want to share a thought with me and ask me anything, you can do so by clicking on the link that I just dropped into the live chat. We got about 10 minutes, so why not get a couple calls in here? Let me know where you're at on Orioles opening day, in the process of Ravens draft strategizing. I'm sure a lot of you are, and Maryland basketball tonight. It's fun. Honestly, it's a fun time. It was fun watching some of the NFLPA golf content. And how about KVN's swing? How about the hip movement and the follow-through from Kyle Van Noy on the golf course? Looks to have an iron in his hand, maybe a high iron, it looks like. But take a look at that golf swing from Mr. Kyle Van Noy. I love it. Let's get some patrons in here before we go to the guest lines, and they're cooking right now. The waiting room is rolling. Jason Zaratniak and Mark Pankhurst, thank you both for believing in what we're building. This is your monthly shout out. We appreciate the support that you guys give us for being members of the Vault Patreon community. So Jason, Mark, thank you both. If you guys are interested in doing the same, you can visit patreon.com/RavensVault podcast. To the guest lines we go. It's been a minute since we did this inside the vault. Justin will be first. What's up, dude? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going, man? Can you hear me?
Blue skies, baby. Where are you headed?
I'm headed home. I'm actually in northern Ohio, where I live.
Nice.
Yeah, I was born right where Sarah lives.
I love it.
Hell yeah, in Westerville, Ohio. I've been watching your fucking show for like 3 years now. Like when you first started this and since before you started the vault. And let me tell you, man, where our Ravens have came since then, I'm proud of EDP and the team he's built. I think that they need to tighten up in the playoffs, but other than that, I've never been so proud to be a Ravens fan.
Appreciate it, man. Hey, if you have a headset or anything, we can barely hear you, and I want to hear what you have to say. So maybe either, try something. We'll get to more. Careful out there too, will you? There we go. AirPods are going in. Appreciate you guys for being with us today. We got Justin in Northern Ohio, and your call line here says Wiggins. So you want to talk about Nate?
You hear me?
Oh, so much better.
All right, hell yeah. Well, yeah, I live right by Sarah up in Ohio. I've been commenting on all your guys' videos talking about Ohio all the time.
Heck yeah.
Bobby, just go to the next caller. You're good.
Okay, brother. Appreciate
Yeah, sorry,
you,
I'm driving. My bad.
No, you're good. You're good, Justin. Appreciate you. Appreciate you guys for being here. We got a few more minutes, and it looks like when Justin popped on, everybody popped off the waiting room. So if that's it, I'm gonna jump. Somewhat of a slow day, but it'll be anything but coming up tonight, that's for sure. So I look forward to it. All right, guys. Tomorrow, Mike Golick, 12:30. Hope you'll join me then. I'll be live from Boston, catching a flight tonight to Massachusetts. And Chef Trez at the buzzer. Chef, if you're with me, turn that camera on. I'll bring you on. Sebastian, I'm going to be watching the game from the plane, I think. Or I'll probably be in an Uber, literally with my YouTube stream on, watching the Maryland game. Oh, you're talking about Orioles? I'll be mid-flight. But, yeah, we'll try and get as much in as possible, being that I'm traveling. All right, guys. Chef, you going to get us into the buzzer? What's up, dude?
Bobby, I just want to
Yeah,
ask
you're making
what
up
are
for last time. I know.
listen, what are you gonna do now that you're, you know, Bobby Buffalo and Bobby New York? You know, your Giants, whether it's Buffalo Bills, the team's gonna lose to the Ravens. Come next year, the playoffs, they're gonna lose to the Ravens. I don't know how you're gonna recover.
I
I
love
don't
how
know
you
what
think that I
coping
have this.
mechanisms you're gonna have, but
I think it's hysterical how you think I have these allegiances.
listen, Bobby, you're already shopping yourself around. You know, Bobby, South Carolina, Bobby, Arizona, Bobby.
Recruitment is open. I am in the portal. The portal is a avid place. I mean, it is just place is insane. Yeah, I got Dre Dog down in South Carolina that's trying to pull me in that direction. Dreams wants me to go down to Virginia. I had somebody make a big play yesterday for Atlanta. Where the hell you want me to go?
Dude, probably Hawaii.
Hawaii. Oh, Hawaii.
Yeah, best
Alex,
place. Best
that's right.
place.
Alex Panduro yesterday dropped in a super chat trying to get me to go to Hawaii.
All right.
So we'll see. There's a lot of options on the table.
Quick question. So,
yeah,
again, regarding all the moves that the Ravens have made, they still have, you know, all 11 draft picks and whatnot. Do you see it likely somewhere during whether it's the first day to last day of the NFL draft, the Ravens make a trade to fill maybe a key position or something like that? I mean, and if they do, who possibly do you see them trading?
Yeah, who would be the biggest candidate? Mark's roster bonus triggered. And it was $4 million.
Yeah.
So unless it's just something that they can't, and there's a willing partner that's out there that's sending them a game wrecker, and it's just something that they can't refuse. I don't really see that happening. When it comes to Adafe, they paid him the 5th-year option. He's set to play there right now. I think a lot of teams would covet how untapped he might be viewed in their eyes. I don't want to say this third name, but can you think of a more coveted piece, speaking of untapped, because he just simply hasn't had a lot of opportunities because of who's been playing in front of him? You know where I'm going with this.
No, not really. Not gonna like it.
Hey, is there a more compelling more valuable trade piece on this team right now than Isaiah Likely?
Yeah, I don't like that you just said that, man.
I know. Hey, you asked. You asked.
I thought you were gonna go anywhere other than Isaiah Likely, because I feel like most people in their minds are like, okay, one more year, Andrews is gone, Likely steps in, you know, Kolar also really solid, great blocking tight end, and also can make some plays out in space too. Um, but I mean to trade Likely, are you saying like we got to keep Mark? If you trade Likely, keep Mark, draft another tight end, or maybe Kolar steps into that role. That's a bit much. I think we need Sarah back because she would rein you in. She would probably tell you that was a little crazy.
Oh, I'm not advocating for it. If you're asking me though, trade scenarios, and you're looking at players that would be highly coveted from other teams.
So, okay, so if you trade Likely, what player or what position do you think? I guess maybe the Ravens could trade for to fill a hole, because I mean you're essentially causing a hole to try and fill another hole if they do end up trading Likely.
Well, it's a really deep tight end class, so I think they would try to refill through. You'd run it back with Mark and potentially extend him. He proved to be durable last year, coming off the ankle injury, so that's out there. I think the performance and everybody's lost trust in him within a certain percentage of the fan base, to me, is totally overblown and ridiculous. It's not to say that he didn't. Call it spade a spade. He came up small in a big moment. We all know that. And has before in the postseason. We all know that. But to me, that shouldn't take away from the full body of work. So in this event, you would retool through the draft, and you would try to obviously in exchange, receive some sort of game wrecking pass rusher, or draft compensation. But again, not advocating for this. It's just when you ask me who, it's not going to be Andrews. The $4 million bonus was just paid out earlier this month. And I don't think it's going to be Oweh. Now, granted, the tweets suggest that it could be, the cryptic tweets.
A little bit. I mean, shoot. I mean, if I had to give my piece, maybe because I don't even know. I don't think we could. I would. I don't know, Bobby. I don't know.
You're pissed. You're pissed that that was
I'm
brought up
still
now.
thinking. I can't even believe you said Likely, man. It's hurting that you said that.
I'm just trying to think about other areas that if you take Andrews out of the equation and you take Oweh, who's the player that you would get the most in return for? And what is also the position group that you're most comfortable with right now? I get it. After 2025, there's a ton of question marks, right?
Yeah.
Mark is potentially, everybody's hitting their contract year.
I mean, and the void years on top of that too. It's rough. It's rough. But all right, thank you as usual. Chef tries slander.
You're upset
going
that
back down.
Yeah, you're upset that you brought it up, but I'm so glad that you called in back-to-back days. I really am.
All right, thank you.
All right, brother. Later. Appreciate Chef. Hey, he asked. Not advocating for the team to go and trade Isaiah Likely, but Chef asked the question. My mind immediately went to Andrews and Oweh, broke those two players down, and then ultimately it comes down to what are you going to be getting in return? The Ravens would get a lot in return for Isaiah Likely. Purpose of the exercise. That's all I'm saying. Guys, I know obviously the last 20 minutes has been non-Ravens related for the most part, so appreciate your patience. Looking forward to having a full Ravens show tomorrow. I will probably dedicate at least a couple minutes to talk about whatever happened for opening day and whatever happened in the Sweet 16. But Mike Golick is set to join me at 12:30 tomorrow, so I look forward to that conversation. Like the video on your way out if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when I'm dropping my daily live content. And I will catch up with you guys in under 23 hours from right now for a Friday Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. It's 12 noon Eastern. I look forward to it. For Sarah Ellison, for my guests, Chef and Justin, I'm Bobby Trossett signing off from this Thursday stream. And as always, we'll catch up with you in just a bit here inside the vault. Talk soon.